My name's Jim Sander. I am a mortgage loan officer with the Mortgage Guru Group. We are a DBA of American Financial Network. I have been in the lending business. I actually got my start in it back in the 1990s. So I am that old. But I've been with AFN for a little over a year now. Amazing company, really enjoying it. And I'm so happy to be here and get a chance to share some of the experiences we have and learn a lot, hopefully, about what's going on with the economy, with real estate, and spending time with my good friend Hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for meeting with me today, Jim. I'm excited about the information we're going to share today with everyone regarding the real estate market. I'm Hope Teel Colt with Remax Fine Properties. Remax Fine Properties is the number one Remax office in the state of Texas, which is pretty cool. I've been with Remax for a little over 12 years and in the Austin area for almost 18. So between Jim and I think we're going to be able to bring you some good content today.
Yeah, and a little something about Jim and Hope. When I moved back to Austin, Hope actually helped us find our home. So I can attest, she's an amazing realtor, and be lucky to get a chance to work with her. I know we were. We felt blessed. So terrific. All right. Well, let's kick things off. I think one of the great things that we can talk about right now is just kind of sharing a little bit about what's going on with the economy, and specifically the real estate market here in Austin, because it's a little bit of an oddball right now because of where we sit in the grand spectrum of things. Most markets across the country are dealing with shrunk inventory and price pressures. And they're actually seeing, prices rising. It's getting to be a little bit of that competing for properties again. But Austin isn't really seeing that. What are you seeing in the marketplace right now, Hope?
I feel honestly like the market is definitely still moving. We have had a pretty substantial increase in inventory, but looking at putting into perspective and coming from where we were at the lowest point was less than 1 month of inventory, it was 0.7 months of inventory, to the latest numbers that came out that said that we are around 3.7 months of inventory. There's a lot of news and media that I think is striking a little bit of fear in people, especially around the economy overall. There's a lot of just really sensational, conflicting, and confusing news out there. So people don't really know what to believe or think. And I think that that's definitely holding some people back right now. That said, there's still great demand in the Austin area. We still have on average 146 people per day moving into the Austin metro area. And those people will need places to live.
Absolutely. So, with where we're at compared to the rest of the country, do you think it's just a matter of time before we end up in the same space and we're also going to be in a competitive market environment with limited inventory and prices rising again? I mean, do you think that's pretty practical for where we are at, or are we just still kind of in this correction mode that we've been in for the past several months?
Well, interest rates are projected to start coming down by the end of the year. When that happens, we are going to have a flood of buyers into the market. That pent up demand is going to come in and exacerbate our existing inventory. Push us back into that competitive marketplace that we were in the last couple of years. I mean, we still don't have a balanced market as far as inventory goes. While we were at 3.7 months of inventory, balanced market is between 5 and 6 months of inventory. So, when interest rates do start to come down, buyers are going to jump off the fence. We are going to start seeing more and more of those multiple offer situations.
Right. We start thinking about that. And I agree with you as well. I mean, I get calls about this all the time. What's going on with interest rates right now? There was a lot of expectation the rates were going to be falling, especially by this time of the year. And that makes a lot of sense based on where things have been with inflation, right? Because typically when inflation falls, interest rates fall. And that was the whole reason why the Fed raised interest rates in the first place, was in hopes of, slowing down the economy by doing so, curbing inflation. But now that inflation is finally going down, mortgage interest rates haven't really followed suit, at least not yet. But I agree. I think by the end of the year, we're going to start seeing some of these take effect. And that's going to just, open things up from everybody and their brother wanting to get in the marketplace. So when people are concerned about rates being high right now, to them a lot about not letting that be a deterrent against getting into the market at this point. One of the things that we like to talk about in the mortgage business is you date the rate, you live in the home, right? You're married to the home. You can always refinance to a lower rate if the market improves. But if you miss out on getting a house right now when prices are deflated a little bit, you're really going to miss out on a big opportunity. Would you agree with that? I mean, do you think that's an important thing for buyers and borrowers to be giving consideration right now?
I absolutely agree with you. And just kind of tying that back into bringing it back into perspective, the history of real estate in the United States shows us that home values in the United States only ever go up outside of technical periods of correction like we're in right now. During these technical periods of correction is when buyers have the most opportunity in this market by far. So actually, if you're looking to get any sort of deal, this is the kind of market that you want to be in. We're able to negotiate off the prices. You have more time to make a decision. You don't have to make a decision in 24 hours on if you want to buy this house. There's room for negotiation, after inspection periods are done. And there's a lot of opportunity for buyers in this market, more than there has been in such a very long time.
Is there a certain segment of the marketplace that the existing environment is more beneficial? Is this a great time for first time home buyers? Is this a great time for move up buyers? Is it a great time for investors? Is this a time to jump in and get a home now, or should they be holding out and waiting for rates to decline?
Well, I think that's, one of the biggest points here is waiting is going to become a very bad recipe for a lot of buyers very soon. To directly answer your question about first time home buyers, this is the time to buy because, that's what, like we were talking about, you rent the rate, you marry the house. Once we go back into that competitive marketplace where people are offering appraisal waivers and guaranteeing sales prices, having to bring loads of cash out of pocket upfront for closing, first time home buyers can't compete with that.
I couldn't agree more. And that is a struggle. So this is the market for first time homebuyers to get in. You mentioned a big segment of the last, Austin home rush, which were, when we were in COVID, when technology was growing, everybody was moving to Austin. Investors were coming in the marketplace in droves, throwing out cash offers and making it very, very challenging. First time home buyers, forget about it. I mean, they just, it was so difficult for them to find anything. But even most move up buyers were kind of pressured out from an investment standpoint. Are you still seeing investors in the marketplace? Is Austin still a really strong investment market, just not quite as densely populated with investors as it was in the past?
In my experience, we're still seeing a lot of investors coming into this market because, the investors tend to be that demographic of buyers who are not as fearful. A lot of them are pretty seasoned and they understand that these periods of correction are the best time to get into the marketplace. So we're going to continue to see investors in the Austin market as Austin, keeps growing.
So it's still a good time for them to buy in this environment as well.
Yeah, I always like to speak from personal experience, and we're in the process of buying an investment property right now.
Oh,
Adding it
really?
to our
Wow.
portfolio.
Yeah. So how's that going? Did you find that you got a pretty decent deal because the market dipped a little bit?
Yes, we were able to negotiate a very fair price for the seller, but also a price that we were very happy and pleased to find. And this was a price that you would not have seen in the marketplace a couple of years ago.
Definitely a good time for investors to look at getting into the marketplace. So I guess the third bucket here is going to be move up buyers. So somebody that currently owns a home in Austin. As we talk about the fact that home prices are a little deflated right now, as a home owner myself, I'd probably be a little concerned about selling right now because don't know if I feel like I'm getting top dollar for my home. Is that a pretty logical thought pattern or am I missing something here?
Well, I think there's that concern for sellers. There's also the concern of, well, most sellers are in really low interest rates that are much lower than what we're seeing in the marketplace right now. That's going to probably continue to keep our inventory on the lower side until rates do adjust.
Mhm.
But it's also adding to that pent up demand. My advice would be if you are thinking about buying or selling, that's correct. You may not be getting the same price that your neighbor got a year ago, but you're also not having to pay it forward on the front end of the house when
Hmm.
you buy another one. That's kind of my big thing with it is if you're in a competitive market and you're selling your house for top dollar, you're also going to have to buy for top dollar.
And that's a really good point as well, because from a finance perspective, the more you end up spending on the house, the larger the down payment, the commitment. Things change from that perspective, and your ability to qualify for the higher price house payment. From that perspective, selling right now might make a lot of sense because, to your point, yeah, I'm not getting as much for mine, but also not spending as much on the next one. And if I'm buying a lower priced home, it opens up a lot of opportunities, right? I may be underneath the jumbo loan limit right now. And by the way, jumbo loan limit, Travis County, $726,201. So if you're 201 or anything over 726,200, it's a jumbo, right? This is a consideration. The fact that maybe the house that you want to buy with your down payment is going to stay below that. And if it does, it's going to be have the benefit of a lower interest rate than a jumbo loan and better terms. You don't have to necessarily put as much down either. So there are some definite advantages, I think, for move up buyers right now as well.
Yeah, and Jen, a funny point here, or interesting rather, is that a lot of buyers that were buying that inflated market are looking at similar payments for the same house and a lower price point with the higher interest rate right now.
The market's changed. Coming out of COVID, people, everybody stayed and worked from home. Companies want to get folks back in the office. So some of them have kind of pushed that, but they've also seen pushback from their employees who really enjoy the opportunity to work from home. So, it's kind of created this hybrid workforce environment. Have you seen that show up when you're showing clients homes? Are you still finding people that have tremendous flexibility about, buying anywhere in the metro area? Or are you starting to find that more and more people are trying to get close to the office?
I haven't really seen an impact or shift otherwise related to people trying to get close to the office. Because a lot of people are still hybrid. More importantly, it's about the quality of life and your lifestyle. I was just on a video consult with a buyer yesterday, and that was the first question that I asked him is, what do you see your ideal lifestyle in Austin? What does that look like? Because that's going to help me tell you where you should consider purchasing. And I think for most people, as long as they're within like a 30 to 45-minute drive of their office, which gives you a pretty good radius in Austin, open to considering some options. And I'm going to do a share screen here. Brian Buffini, do you know who that is?
I do.
He does a bold predictions webinar every year, and it was just on like last week or the week before. So much good information and kind of thinking about generational living, the generations population growth in the US, which is going to be a huge factor in the demand for buyers. What experts are predicting is that we are going to have one of the biggest years in real estate in 2025 in the history of the United States. So there are several indicators, and one of them is that economists are predicting that rates are going to come down. As I know you well know, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll come into the mid fives, and next year, hopefully come down into the mid four range, possibly 4.5 to 5%. Sam Cotter, Freddie Mac chief economist, talking about rates declining. Here we've got Lawrence Yun, which is the chief economist of the National Association of Realtors. His predictions are a little bit more conservative. Here we've got Michael Brantantoni, chief economist and senior vice president of research and mortgage bankers association, talking about 5.5 by the end of the year. Some big names, people that are really well experienced in this industry, making these predictions. Why they're predicting 2025 is going to be one of the biggest years in real estate is because they say that the average first-time home buyer is 34 to 35 years old. So right now we can see that these millennials is the highest percentage of our population in the United States at 73 million. And right now they're at that age of 32, 33.
Again, I think it kind of screams to the idea of taking action now versus waiting, because as more and more buyers go into the marketplace, really happy with the fact that I currently own a home because they're,
You.
they're going to increase price pressure even further, which is going to raise the equity in my home.
Another one of the indicators are that over 3 million households in the US that gross over 150 a year are still renting. A big part of that is the population of those people who are waiting for the rates to come down.
We were talking about that the CBS News interview with Ramit Sethi, who did that Netflix How to Get Rich show, and he was promoting the benefit of renting versus buying. And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Please." I mean, a phantom cost. Who doesn't realize that you got to pay taxes and insurance? And when you're sitting there comparing the fact that you don't have interest or the same type of insurance costs, you're not paying taxes when you're renting, is kind of BS because yeah, absolutely, you're paying it. It's just you're not directly paying it, you're paying it to the landlord. The landlord's paying it. The expenses are still there all the way around, right?
Mhm.
And so I don't see how you can do a comparable, especially when you're giving up all the equity, because every dollar that you're giving to the landlord is equity that he's building. It's that, it's money that's going directly into his account. And when he sells the property 10 years from now, he's going to gain all this equity in the property and you miss out on all of it. And oh, by the way, if you have bought the property 10 years ago, your payment, right, from a principal and interest standpoint, would be exactly the same for the next 10 years. If you're renting, especially in the Austin marketplace, your rental costs are going up every single year, and they're going up substantially. So the comparison, I mean, it was just annoying listening to this guy because he's, in my perspective, he's so freaking wrong, right?
I get it. I'm passionate about it too. I really, my team and I work from a standpoint of like education and information. We want people to make informed and empowered decisions that they are not only comfortable with, but like excited about becoming homeowners or expanding their investment portfolio or making a move up or down or whatever the need is, right? It's up to us really to try to get truthful information out there, backed up by numbers and experts, because what the media is feeding us is, like I mentioned before, it's sensational, right? I looked at a headline, I wish I could remember what it was the other day. It looked so negative, and I opened it up, and the headline really had no connotation of the article related to housing. It was actually a pretty positive article, but the headline itself was like, made you think it was going to be really bad,
Right.
really bad.
You fell for clickbait.
Uh,
I do it all the time. Right. The sensational, and I think that's exactly what CBS News was doing. I mean, you bring somebody on to talk about the fact that it's smart to buy real estate, right? To get in the marketplace. And it's like everybody already knows that. But you bring in somebody that talks with conviction. And I did a show on Netflix, and, I get all of my education from Netflix. This is exactly the point. So they bring in somebody that says something like, renting makes total sense in today's environment. It makes all the renters feel really justified, the fact that they're there. But I'm worried because it's not helping them realize that's not the best move for their ability to grow wealth over time. The stats that you were showing earlier, 30% of people in the US own their home, and another 30% own at least 50% of it, right? I mean, that's not the wealth that you get from home ownership.
Back to this graph, a lot of people are concerned about the headlines are creating a lot of fear in the marketplace. That plus, the word recession that everyone's afraid of, it might as well be the word Voldemort, the thing that must not be named. The reality is that a crash is not coming. A 2008 crash is not coming. And in this graph right here is proof as to why a crash like we had in 2008 is actually impossible in today's market. We have over 39% of people own their homes free and clear, no mortgage, no anything. 29% have more than 50% equity in their house. So that means that 68.1% of homeowners in America have 50% or more equity and or own their house outright free and clear. So foreclosures that people are waiting on, they're not going to come. We're not going to see that.
Yeah. And think about how much wealth is in that 60%. People have had an opportunity to make so much money. And we're just talking about equity, right? We're not even talking about growth. What did they buy the house for 10 years ago versus what it's worth today? Just Tremendous.
This shows the history of home prices in America. So, like we talked about before, home values in the United States only ever go up outside of those technical periods of correction, like we're in now, which is where we've shown is really the most opportunity for buyers. But looking at an 81-year history, since 1942, home values in the US on average have appreciated 73 times, have only gone down 7 times, and have stayed the same 1 year.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm just doing the math on this real quick in my head, right? So it's 2023. If you go back 10 years and you look at that 45, you take out the last 3 years, which was 4% shrinkage. So that drops it down to 41. But then you add in the 39, right? The growth that we've had over the last 3 years. You're talking about home prices appreciating, what is that, 90% in 10 years. So if you bought a home 10 years ago for $200,000, it's worth $380,000 today. That's $180,000 in equity. I mean,
That actually sounds about right, too.
it does too, right? It's like, holy cow, what a enormous amount of opportunity wealth because somebody took the time to enter into the marketplace that was possibly renting prior to that 10 years ago. And by the way, $200,000, not a starter home 10 years ago, but not that far off from one, right? And now they've got $180,000 in equity. And when they go to buy that move up home, and by the way, the move up home isn't going to be a $400,000 home because that's what they're in now. The $200,000 home is a $400,000 home, but maybe it's a $600,000 home, right? So they're taking that equity and they're putting it down towards that home. So you're not worried about mortgage insurance anymore. That's gone, right? They're actually keeping the payment probably not all that far off from where they are right now. So it's a great opportunity for people. I just want to, say it over and over again for first time home buyers. It just seems to make so much sense to get into the marketplace versus just continue to rent.
It really does. And I'm glad you said that too, because it just kind of reminds me like, I think for people that are thinking about getting in the market, it's important to understand that by having an initial conversation with me and with you, me, on the real estate side and you on the mortgage side, there's no obligation to buy right now, but you can come away if you don't buy right now, or if you do, you come away armed with information. You're making an informed decision based on facts. You're not making decisions based on fear.
Yeah, and you're building out a strategy for what you want to do when the time comes, whether that time is next month, next year, or 5 years from now. It doesn't really matter. At least you have a plan in place on what you're going to do to get there. It's, really smart. And I wish more people took the time to do it now. I wish I'd known that, 3 years ago, right? I wish I'd known that when I graduated college. I wish I'd known that when I was thinking about buying my first home, but I decided not to because it just seemed like I didn't have enough money saved up. Because my parents told me, or their parents told me, or somebody told me that it takes 20% down to buy a home. And gee whiz, I didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. But if you took the time to have that conversation with one of us, they could have found out that you can buy a home with literally with no money down nowadays. There are down payment assistance programs that help people get in with no money down. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to qualify for those type of programs, especially if you're starting out early. Whether it's 20% down or 10% or 5% or 3.5%, there's so many different options for people.